Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the SHERA Best Practices and 18-month policy session. We know that you're busy, so we appreciate you making the time to join today. So we'll give everyone a few minutes to get settled in, but while we do, I'd like to spend a few moments walking through a few housekeeping items for how you can engage during this session. First, please make sure to mute your Zooms to avoid any disruptions throughout the session. If at any point throughout today you have any questions, please send those in the Q&A. We do have designated times throughout the session for questions. Again, please do use the Q&A functionality during these times that we have designated. And if we don't get to everyone's questions during the session, we will make sure to get back to you. And we do have a SHERA FAQ that we update fairly consistently. So if we aren't unable to get to your questions, we will make sure to update the FAQs. So a quick note, today's call will be recorded. If you do object to being recorded, please disconnect from the session and reach out to us so that we can work with you to find out another way for you to get this information. And we have begun recording the presentation. So before we dive into the materials, I did want to take a few seconds to introduce our speakers today. We have a whole team ready to support you and your staff as you get up to speed and comfortable with the Subsidized Housing Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So joining us today is Robert Ortiz from UHM Properties, Juliana Stewart from POA, Carrie Moore from the Dedham Housing Authority, Trevor Samios from WIN, and Rosalind Cresswell from the Mass Office of Public Collaboration at UMass Boston. And I'm Robert Malo from DHCD. We also have Viva and Accenture, our consulting firms supporting DHCD with the rollout of the SHERA program. So our journey today, we'll start by reviewing our training goals and objectives. Then we'll get into a SHERA program overview and highlight some key accomplishments and updates on the program. Next, I'll talk about the policy expansion and the terms of the new policy. We will then hear from our owners and property managers on SHERA best practices and benefits, as well as from community mediation staff. And then finally, we'll review next steps, resources, and end with some time for questions. So the objective today is to review the Subsidized Housing Emergency Rental Assistance 18th month policy and provide an understanding of best practices for this program. And our goal is ultimately to provide better support to property owners and residents that are eligible for SHERA as they apply for assistance through this program. So we do want to hear from you to better understand your role and get a sense of who is joining us today. What we have on the screen is a Menti poll, and to participate in the poll and answer these questions, you can go to menti.com on your smartphone or computer browser and enter the code 23093644 into the field shown on the right. So we do have a few questions. What role do you play at your property or site? And have you submitted any claims through the SHERA portal yet? So we'll take a few minutes to do this. Menti.com again. The code is 23093644. Okay, so we're seeing a large number of property management staff, which is great, and some resident services staff, as well as a few owner sponsors. So in about 30 seconds, we'll move on to the second question. All right, we will pivot to the second question. Again, the code is 23093644 on menti.com. And the question is, have you submitted any claims or applications through the SHERA portal? Okay, great. So we have a few folks that have already submitted claims, many that haven't yet, but are planning to, and a few that are undecided. So we'll jump into the SHERA program overview and benefits. As an overview of SHERA, the program is for renters impacted by COVID-19. It is a federally funded emergency housing assistance program. So what SHERA does is help residents of both public and affordable housing clear their rent arrearages. And from starting July 1st, from April 1st, 2020 to September 30th, 2021. Qualified owners of rent restricted properties are able to apply for assistance with rent arrearages on the accounts of all of their eligible tenants. And just some key program benefits that we wanted to highlight. First is the ability to bulk upload applications. So there's an owner-based online process to apply on behalf of multiple residents in a single application. The second is income certification. So what we're doing with this program is taking advantage of the compliance work that you already do as owners and property managers of subsidized housing. So owners can document tenant income eligibility either in 2020 or 2021 annual income verifications that are already required to comply with state and federal programs. Another key benefit of the program is response time. So currently the average time from application submission to approval is 18 days, and payments are made directly to the owner or their authorized agent for payment on the tenant's account. And then finally is building on the pledge of working with households to divert eviction due to rent arrearages owed and keep residents stably housed. We do work in partnership with ERAP, which is administered by regional administering agencies, and owners are encouraged to continue to refer their tenants to the RAs for utility and moving expense assistance. So just some key highlights of SHERA since the program went live on May 20th. So first, thank you for everyone who's participated thus far. Your efforts are helping to keep people housed. And as of the 28th of June, here are some numbers that we did want to share. Assisted 130 properties, about 600 households, and committed or paid over $1.2 million in back paid rent. Again, highlighting the turnaround time from submission to payment of an 18-day average currently, with the average monthly arrears being repaid of 5 months and a little over $2,000 in the average arrearage amount being paid. So I'll get into SHERA policy updates. So we do have some exciting news for the program. So effective July 1st, SHERA will extend the benefit period from 12 to 18 months. What that means is SHERA will cover tenant share rent arrearages due between April 1st, 2020 and the end of September of 2021. So this new 18-month benefit extension replaces the previous program period, which paid up to 12 months of rent arrears accrued through March 31st of 2021. There remains no dollar limit to total benefits per eligible household. SHERA will continue to pay the equivalent of the monthly tenant share of the rent for any given month, and no change where fees and charges are not eligible and will not be paid by SHERA. So to implement the new policy, SHERA will process claims for a given month after the first day of the following month. So any claims submitted for current or future months will not be processed. So for example, claims for July 2021 arrears will be accepted no earlier than August 1st. Claims for August 2021 arrears will be accepted no earlier than September 1st. So recognizing that in the original benefit period of 12 months, with this new extension to 18 months, there may be some reapplications for additional assistance. So the policy will clarify and include information on these reapplications. So first, owners may apply multiple times for a single tenant household, provided that the claims are for different months of assistance. Households that have already signed a tenant certification and have consented for the owner to apply on their behalf do not need to complete a new certification to receive assistance beyond the original 12-month period. However, households may opt out of additional assistance. So if an owner agent intends on requesting additional assistance for that household beyond March 2021, they must share an opt-out notice with a household of intent to do so before applying on their behalf. And we have boilerplate language that may be used. As far as the opt-out notice, the household should have at least 5 days to respond if it wishes to decline the additional assistance. And if they do not opt out within those 5 days, the owner agent may then submit the additional claim in the SHERA portal. A few other clarifications in the policy expansion is first the income documentation requirement. So an owner agent may use monthly point-in-time income documentation for a single application of rental arrearage assistance. A yearly certification of income or a 2020 IRS Form 1040 does not require the tenant to resubmit income documents. And as far as frequency of submission, the owner agent does have flexibility in how often they submit claims for assistance. So for example, you may choose to batch and submit claims every 3 months or submit a single claim each month. Diving a little bit deeper on application claims, because there are a few scenarios that we wanted to cover. So a few scenarios that take into account the extended benefit period. The first scenario is a claim has already been submitted and is pending approval. So these claims should be processed for payment, and owner agents must submit new claims in the SHERA portal for any new months of assistance requested for each household. You can see the example below where a claim was submitted in the portal for the full 12 months, totaling $5,000 and is pending approval. The tenant household also has rent due for April, May, and June. So the owner agent may submit claims for these additional arrearage months starting on July 1st. if a claim has already been approved in the system. If a household was approved for a SHERA claim under the initial period of April 1st, 2020 through March 31st of 2021, they may apply for additional months through September 2021. So for example, a claim was submitted during the initial eligibility period. That claim was approved. The tenant household also has rent due for August. The owner agent may submit an additional claim for these arrearage months starting on September 1st of 2021. The final two scenarios where a claim has not yet been submitted. So in this scenario, owners are encouraged to review each claim prior to submission to determine if the household is eligible for these additional months of assistance. So for example, a property manager was preparing to submit a bulk application with tenant claims for the initial eligibility period. Now that the new policy is effective, we're encouraging property managers to review the tenant arrearages from April through June 2021, sending the opt-out notice to each household, and then updating the tenant claims accordingly to include those expanded months. And finally, if a claim has already been denied, households with a SHERA claim that was denied under the initial period may still reapply for additional months. So in this example, a claim was submitted in the portal. It was denied because the household was over 80% of AMI. Since then, the household circumstances have changed. In this example, a job loss. The household is also now behind on their June 2021. So the owner agent can and must collect monthly income documentation or a new recertification showing that income loss to verify income eligibility, and then may submit claims for the full arrearage amount. So I'll move to the non-eviction commitment. Again, it's part of the SHERA program, and we're offering some clarifications by way of the policy update. So just as a reminder, by participating in SHERA, the owner is committing to a 6-month suspension of any pending eviction in a 6-month period of not initiating a new eviction for non-payment of rent for a household receiving SHERA benefits. This grace period is essential in promoting stable housing for residents affected by the pandemic and helping households get back on their feet as we transition to a recovery. This commitment begins when the last month assistance payment is applied to the household's account. If a household that previously received SHERA funds receives additional assistance during the extended benefit period, the 6-month non-eviction commitment will run for 6 months from the date the last month's payment of the additional assistance is applied. So for example, and there are two below in this table, the last arrearage month of June 2021 was received and applied to the tenant's account on July 1st. The non-eviction commitment will expire 6 months from July 1st or December 31st of this year. And the last slide before we open it up to questions on the policy is resolution steps for non-payment of rents for all households. By participating in SHERA, you're committing to actions you're already taking to divert eviction for non-payment of rent. Owners with properties participating in SHERA are expected to attempt the resolution steps outlined below prior to filing a notice to quit or summoning complaint against any of their residents for non-payment of rent. Many of these resolution steps are already best practices, and we also have some additional tools you may not know about that are free and may help support your work to divert an eviction. So I'll just briefly run through each resolution step. First is to reapply for the program if appropriate. For example, if the household has new past due rent. The second step is conducting outreach to tenants to promote program awareness and access. That includes delivering the outreach letter and the SHERA reference guide for residents. and attempt to contact residents about the program. You'll hear a lot more about successful outreach methods later in the presentation. Also in tandem is continuing to offer solutions in conjunction with and/or instead of SHERA, such as interim recertifications to capture retroactive rent, repayment plans for arrears ineligible for the program, or hardship exemptions if allowed by your subsidy programs. SHERA does not preclude the issuance of a notice to quit. However, the expectation is the notice to quit is issued with the tenant consent form for the program. Again, making the program available to the residents. Seeking pre-court mediation. So this is a free resource available to you at any point during this process. And you will hear more from our community mediation team later in the session to hear how you can leverage the services. And then lastly, pursuing these resolution steps without response or progress. If there is no response or progress, filing a summons and complaint. Taking and documenting these steps are important to ensure successful outcomes wherever possible. And as a component of the SHERA owner agreement in compliance monitoring, DHCD may ask to review documentation demonstrating that these steps have been pursued. So a lot of information to cover, but we will open the floor for questions before continuing with the presentation.
Thanks, Rob. So we did get a couple questions in the Q&A. So if you do have other questions on the policy or what Rob just covered, please use the Q&A feature and we'll answer them live now. So the first question is there an updated eligibility form with the additional months added, or can we write in the new months on the existing form? And yeah.
Sure, I can take this. So we are actually updating the tenant certification form as part of the policy rollout. And the form will be open-ended so that the owner agent can write in the months of arrears.
Great. And additionally, we're also updating the Excel template so that it also includes additional months of arrearages as well, if people would like to use the pre-created template for SHERA submissions. Okay, our next question is, if a resident stopped paying rent long before COVID and we have already started the legal process, are we still bound by the 6-month pause if we receive funds? Rob, I don't know if you want to take this one.
Sure. So if the household is receiving SHERA funds, you do need to suspend eviction proceedings for that 6-month time period.
Okay, let's see the next. If someone has unreported income and charged a lump sum, do we have to submit monthly rent differences? Rob, looking to you again for this answer. And I'm not sure if we need more details for this question.
Sure. So we may need a bit more detail on this specific question, but what we're encouraging interim recertifications to capture any of that unreported income. And so long as it was unreported during the SHERA eligibility period, SHERA may pay for that unreported income.
Great, thanks. Could you explain the opt-out kind of steps again for for the new extended benefit period. So the opt-out notification, Rob, that you went in, that you covered, I think like 2 or 3 slides.
Sure, absolutely. So in summary, if a household has already received a SHERA assistance and is eligible for additional months of assistance, we're not asking owner operators to submit a new consent form to apply on their behalf. But what we are saying is that the owner operator needs to notify the resident of their intent to do so. And the resident has the ability to opt out of that additional assistance or that additional application for assistance. So there we have a boilerplate letter that can be sent out notifying the residents of their opportunity to opt out. And if there is no response within 5 days, then the owner operator can proceed with that application.
Great. And could you also clarify if we need to do the steps for those who owe rent, as shown on the previous slide for all residents, including those who are not eligible for SHERA?
So I think Diane may be referencing the resolution steps.
Yep.
Okay, so that is for all residents in the property that are participating in, if the property is participating in the program. So that's in addition to the households that are receiving SHERA assistance.
Okay, great. And then we have a question, which I think you'll cover later in this presentation, but how do we get project ID information?
Sure, so we will cover this in a little bit more detail, but essentially you will receive an invitation to participate in the program. And with that invitation will be your project ID. So stay tuned for more details on that.
Okay. And I'm going to tee this next question up. I think, Lori, you may be typing an answer, but Edward, if you're able to come off of mute, does this stop pursuant of evictions for other reasons if SHERA is received? On behalf, I'm trying to, I think.
Yeah, thanks, yes. So no, the non-eviction commitment only applies to evictions for non-payment of rent. The scope is not wider than that.
Thank you. And we have another question. If a resident did not have a change of income during COVID and their rent remained the same, are they eligible for SHERA?
I just answered that.
You just answered it. Okay, thanks,
So
Lori.
like me to,
Go ahead.
People, okay. So basically, in order to be eligible for SHERA, residents need to be under 80% or 80% AMI or lower, and they need to attest to experiencing financial hardship as a result, directly or indirectly, of COVID. So the financial hardship may be a decline in income, but it could also be unusual expenses. And the policy is that the documentation for that is their self-attestation of a statement saying that they experienced financial hardship. They are not required to provide additional documentation beyond that self-attestation.
Thanks, Lori. Okay. I might, just for the interest of time, we might pause on the next few questions and continue on with the presentation, then we can come back to them. So we're going to hear now from some of our panelists who have participated as pilot pilot owners and properties in the SHERA program and really help to shape the program, as well as folks who have already applied and can speak to you about kind of best practices when applying and some of the benefits of SHERA as they've experienced it firsthand. So first up, we have Robert from UHM, who's going to talk about collaborative team approach.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction. What I want to really quickly do is talk about the benefits of SHERA program and what it's offering in relation of time, manpower, and convenience. So when COVID first started, we were working with our residents and we did a huge outreach. We posted things on our website and we reached out to all of our residents, and it was pretty much with a collaborative effort to try to get all of our managers, rather than request and ask for rents, it was to do it in a different manner. We were willing to work with our RSC services to bring them in and help assist them in filling out the raft applications or doing that via Zoom, etc. I could tell you we did that for the first year until we were contacted to take part of the SHERA pilot program. And I could also tell you with wholeheartedness, I very much appreciate the SHERA program. And I wanted to talk about the differences between. When we were working with RAFT, what we saw it was about a 4 to 6 month process. And the application could be anything from 17 to about 24 pages in total when we submit this. RAFT, we were working with case managers, and early on, they had to hire many case managers. So if you get assigned, it would look like maybe 3 to 4 months. Often than not, we would get an email maybe 5 months in and say, hey, it's literally case manager was relieved or we're relieving the load, and we would start our process over, have to send our package all over again. So that was hit and miss. It was like, again, it was an extensive package, and there was a lot of back and forth with the case specialist as well, because we were giving them supportive docs from the last AR or IR and such like that. So if it took over 3 months, then they would ask for a refresher package as well. I could tell you the benefits right off the bat when we worked with SHERA is I remember my first submission on May 5th, and we worked diligently with one of our 3 properties, and we submitted on May 5th and uploaded into the portal, and it went through smoothly. And on May 29th, I received an email saying you were approved for payment. I was blown away. So was the manager, and so was pretty much our whole team. So that was a huge difference in time as well. And that we were already collecting again through RAFT, but again, it was a painstakingly processed. So the fact that SHERA has streamlined this, provided us with all documentation. So when you receive your email with your information, you'll get a plethora of information, which is going to serve you and your team very well as well. And I think the key is we really were only looking for one document, and that's one document in need of signature by the resident, confirming that they were affected pretty much throughout the COVID time. So whether it be financially, I know I have residents that they didn't fall too far behind with rent. Maybe it was just a few months, but it's something that we reached out to all if there was any balances that we can help them mediate. So very quickly, when I received the email, what I had done as a regional manager is I took the information in this training course that we're having here today. That's going to give you a lot of that information. What I did is I pretty much read through every line. I knew how important it was to report accurately. I took that I took that very seriously. So I wanted to read through every line before I even made my managers aware of what it was that we were going to partake in. So I took about a week to taking that information. And when I processed that, I kind of created shared drives. So I created shared drives for each site, invited the teams for each site, and I just wanted to set everything up. I mean, I even put our logos on some paperwork and such like that they're going to need. I simply wanted to kind of get it to a point where I could have a meeting and they could just plug and pull, and they could just go right to work with it, so to say. So gathering and processing of the info is very important. You might do that as a team. You might do that you might get the teams, you might get your site teams just to kind of do that on their own. But I thought it was very important because what I knew I wanted to do is kind of everyone has their duties already aligned. We know what we're doing week 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So if I knew this was going to be a 2 or 3 week project, I wanted to make it as seamless as possible. Once I uploaded and created all the share drives, I held a meeting with my management team via Zoom, and that's something that I just wanted to be able to, similar to this call, answer any questions they may have, show them the spreadsheet, the template, and go through the paperwork with them as well. So we did that. It probably took about an hour's time, and there were plenty of questions, but we were all motivated because we knew that we've already taken the process of 4 to 6 months, and we knew it was streamlined. So for us, it was a 17-page document turned into one potentially, and we were all excited about that process as well. So even though it was early on, the excitement was there. We also already had the experiences of working and assisting our residents. So I think the key there is just understanding that we're in a moment in time where we had to switch gears, and we were working differently with our residents. So here we are filling out paperwork with them and leading them to the assistance. We're very appreciative that there's programs like this out there at this moment in time as well. And we know we're in a unique time, so to say. So I'm very proud of the members that we have here at UHM because they took that very seriously. We also joined with support staff. So, and that would be resident services. We have a great RSC department here, and they took part of the same training that the managers took and the Zoom call that the managers took. And we will, again, that excitement was there to kind of get out there, who's going to do what part. But if you have committee members, so each site might have a committee, a resident committee, get them involved, get the leaders of those committees involved as well, because information is pretty much what we really want to get out there. Once one person finds out how seamless it was and how quick it was for them, and then maybe gets paid, that starts to spread as well. But getting more of these things signed, especially for the residents in need of the assistance, is very important. We have a website, so I would suggest if you have a website or if you do any type of outreach, whether it be on a blog or something, I mean, definitely send it out there. Send it out there. If you have a community website, post it out there, making them aware of what you have in hand and the importance of filling out the paperwork and simply getting it back to the office. Part of that resident outreach as well was resident services. Again, our resident committee, we have some sites that have board members, so we sat them down, gave them the opportunity to discuss this with them and make them aware of what we're looking to do. In case any residents reached out to these board members, they would be more informed to kind of support and answer the questions as well, and then refer them to us. I think one of the most important things is once you get it out there and the managers start creating or filling in the template that you provide them, is we were very careful with it. So we were making sure that we didn't have anyone in the middle of an IR or an AR. We wanted to report accurate information. So there were some sites we were doing annuals with. We kind of delayed a little bit, and just to make certain that we got the accurate information and then sent it up there. So I did some things in waves where I would upload maybe 15 or 10 at a time. I would suggest that because it's easier to work with. There are times where you'll upload, and if you uploaded 15, well, I'll give you a real life example. I uploaded 18 this morning, very happily, and 4 of them I received some sort of notification or error to kind of look at the contract rent. Something was over the contract rent. So those are 4 that I'm able to work on, whether it be this afternoon or first thing tomorrow morning. But when you put it in 15, a group of 15, you're able to work on that with your team. So when you do the upload, whoever you choose to do the upload or whatever team you choose to do the upload, part of the upload into the portal is also to respond to the inquiries. I myself just want to be transparent and perhaps I'd offer some assistance to some, but I had some issues uploading into the portal. Even this morning, it was very important because I actually reached out to SHERA, and SHERA actually got it solved this morning. So, and it's it's one of those things where it was just literally 2 data fields that were off, corrected 2 data fields, and the information went through. So whoever you assign to the upload team, be sure that they also going to respond to the inquiries and kind of stay on top of the little issues if you have an issue with inserting into the portal. So I hope that gave everybody a good perspective. I know that the rest of the team, they're going to share their they're going to share their experiences with you. And for me, it's easier for me to share exactly what perhaps was an obstacle. And I did see that there were 6 people that were undecided, but hopefully by the end of this call, they decided and they can see the benefits of the SHERA plan we have here. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great, thanks, Robert. So this is Juliana Stewart. I'm with Preservation of Affordable Housing, or POA. And so I'm going to build off of a lot of what Robert already shared and just offer what's worked really well for us in terms of tools and processes that you might want to use to kind of organize your SHERA submission effort. So also just want to start out by saying a huge thank you to PhD and MHP and Mass Housing, and echo what Robert said. This is a really phenomenal program. There are so many benefits, and what I hope to share with all of you is how some of these tools really maximize those benefits. And so the first tip I think both Robert and I have shared is really to have a point person. So nominate someone from your organization to be the point person, regardless of your size. It's just really helpful to have someone who's getting deeply familiar with this program and can share those important policies and updates with the rest of your colleagues. So it sounds like at UHM, that was Robert. Here at POA, that's me. And what we really do is kind of organize our entire effort and look for ways to kind of quarterback the submission process. And so what this point person will do is just kind of think through your overall strategy, train staff, follow up with the necessary folks in your organization who are involved at different stages, and then kind of ensure that you can close the loop at the end. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So one of the best things about this program, one of the benefits among many, is that there are so many places where you can really centralize what your entire submission process looks like. And again, like no matter how big your organization is, I think there's a lot of opportunity to do that. One great benefit of SHERA is that you can submit your claims in bulk. And so one thing that we do to centralize is we create one template file per property. And I saw someone had a question in the chat about whether that would be provided. I know we're making our template available. So there are tools that are already out there, but we have one file per property and all the resident claims get uploaded into that file. So you don't have to do what Robert talked about, just sort of chase down these longer form individual applications that are all completely separate by resident, but you can have all of your requests, all of your claim requests on one form. And this is also a great way to just make the most of each member of your team. I know we have a lot of property managers here. What we saw is our property managers are already really stretched and really tapped. So we wanted to focus on only giving them responsibilities that really required their presence on site, which is doing that outreach to residents. So it's property managers and resident services staff are really the best folks to do that outreach to residents to encourage them to participate in SHERA. The other steps like registering for the portal, actually submitting your claims, following up if there's more information needed, or addressing any issues, we felt like that was all stuff we could centralize in our home office and kind of take that off of property managers' plate. So if you are a property manager, consider talking to your colleagues in your home office. Hey, is this something that we could centralize and sort of make the most of everyone's expertise? So in terms of each role, like I said, property managers, and I would add resident services staff here, are really the best folks to do that outreach to residents, help them understand the power of the program, encourage them to sign that consent form, and of course, doing those income certs. That's the main thing that we're asking our property managers to do. We've also leveraged a data manager. So if you have anyone in your organization who's data savvy or is particularly skilled in Yardi or RealPage or whatever tool you use, having that person pull all of your delinquency data and prepare that spreadsheet template for your property managers takes one huge step off their plate. So our data manager is responsible for preparing the template spreadsheet. They submit it to the portal and they follow up on any questions. And we found that really helps kind of contain all of the different, either anything we learn about how to format things in the template, or anything we learn about eligibility. It's helpful to have that one person who's really skilled with the portal. Then we have an accounting staff person post all of the funds to the ledger. So that's another thing we were able to take off the property manager's plate. So again, the accounting manager is posting it to the account, and the property manager is able to just go back and notify the resident, hey, we were able to pay this balance, or we needed more information, can you come in? And so again, just really focusing property manager's time on that face-to-face contact. And then I already talked a little bit about having a project manager, very helpful to have somebody who's just sort of keeping an eye on the big picture. We've been using tools like OneDrive. You can also use Google Docs or any sort of shared spreadsheet, shared file tracking system. The benefits of something like OneDrive is that you can update a shared spreadsheet in real time. It's a great way to stay on top of the program and also to, again, have some of those functions centralized. And then last but not least, just really talking about the benefits of this program to everyone. It's good for residents because it's good for us and vice versa. So all of the benefits of SHERA that I think make it unique, how quickly the payments are turned around, that there's significantly less paperwork, there is less required of residents, they don't have to go chase down pay stubs, you can submit in bulk. All these things make it easier for residents. They make it easier for us to manage the process, and they make it much faster to just get this assistance out to families. So if you're a property manager and you're thinking, I need some more support from my organization and be able to do any of the things we've suggested, talk about those benefits. Hey, this is going to be so much faster if we can centralize some of these responsibilities, and we can get this assistance out faster than we could otherwise. So those are just some of our suggestions on ways you can sort of organize and centralize parts of your SHERA application process. And I'm going to turn it over to Carrie.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Carrie Moore. I'm the Executive Director of the Dedham Housing Authority. And I'm going to speak a few moments about my experience with the SHERA program and the website and with resident and tenant outreach. So we started, Andrew Bailey, my Assistant Executive Director, and I started with we tailored the letter to our housing authority. So our letter is for our housing authority, and we used the template that we did receive, and we just added a little additional information to entice the tenants to want to come in and discuss this option with us. Those letters we sent to all of our residents, and they were hand delivered by our resident service coordinator and our maintenance staff to get them out quickly, so we can do the turnaround quickly for them, so they can see that we really want to help them with their balances. We also put the information on our website, for anyone to see that's one of our residents, so they can get the information, contact us. Again, we just tried to make it more friendly, not a situation where they felt embarrassed or nervous or anything that would, make them not feel that we're here to help them, because that's what we're here to do. So in our letter, we did ask the tenants to schedule a meeting with us. And the reason we did that is we felt we wanted to explain the process more, hand them the tenant, the SHERA tenant overview documents, and just go over the application tenant certification with them one-on-one. That way they can answer questions, we can ask them questions, and they can, we can just see what happened, what's their situation. We went over the application with them, and they liked that more. Instead of just saying, here, sign this, do this, let's get this done. It made them feel, everyone that was very responsive that did come into our office and speak with us. Before they left, if at the time, as we know, the time frame was not as long as it is now. It's not the 18-month now. We also gave them the raft information to apply to help with expenses other than their rent, like the utilities and anything like that. So we did that. We answered questions to all of them. And some of the tenants that are eligible and did not respond, or qualified and didn't respond, we filled out the top part of the tenant certification application, however you want to word it, to the tenant, and ask them to answer the questions, review it, call us. We'll go over it on, through Zoom, on the phone, whatever they feel it's easier for them, and get it back to us. We have had some respond that way. Maybe they didn't want to come into the office. Maybe they're not comfortable. Again, that's not a problem. We just want to make sure we reach every tenant, and anyone who's qualified can get the help that they need to pay their balances. If we still have no response, our next step, we have a few that still haven't, we are going to make phone calls, we're going to send emails, we're going to have the resident service coordinator go door to door, contact them, ask them to, come meet with us, or if they're not comfortable, if they would just take the certification, read it, drop it off in our outside mailbox. So, we don't even have to discuss it if they don't want. But I feel like sitting down is better explaining. And what we've used, if we found that was better for the Dedham Housing Authority, is we've used the Excel template. We did not go through our software system to upload everybody, because not all of our households are qualified. So what we've done is we use the Excel template, which was, I felt, very easy to use. We saved it, we entered everything in. Again, I was myself and my assistant director, Andrew Bailey. We've sat down together. We've worked very well together to get the template completed. Once we saved it, we go into the system, we uploaded it, and it was done. And I have to say, I felt it was easier than I thought it was going to be as a housing authority, especially when you don't have a lot of staff to do all this work. The resident service coordinator was also helpful with the tenant outreach. We've also informed the tenant every step of the way of the steps that we have done, so they're all aware. And as of today, about 2 weeks ago, we entered eight of our tenants have been entered into the SHERA system, and I have been informed that the payments for those 8 should be done this week. And today we just entered 3 to 4 more applicants into the system. Again, it took us probably, honestly, about 5 to 10 minutes to do the Excel template, upload it, press the button, and we were done. So I as a housing authority here, the Dedham Housing Authority, I can't say enough how I think it's a great system to work with. We haven't had any problems, and we are grateful to have the help through DHCD and this government. So that's all I have, and I'm now going to turn it over to Trevor, who will present on the effective resident participation strategies.
Thank you, Carrie. So we've heard from many of you that are entering this program that reaching eligible households for some can be a challenge. So like any other important project, a best practice recommendation from those of us that have gone through the pilot program is to break down your approach into manageable tasks as you think about how to make this successful with your teams at your properties. So I'm going to quickly walk through a set of best practices that we've implemented to increase effective resident participation in the SHERA program, and hopefully simplify some of the steps that you're about to tackle. Next slide, please. So first off, create a game plan. Sit down with your team and outline a plan to tackle effective outreach at your property or properties that leverages the strength of each team member. Stage your plan over time and decide who's responsible for what. And set a time each week, even briefly, when you can touch base on your progress. Next slide, please. Make sure each team member understands how SHERA works. Once you've made a submission or two, one of the things that we did was starting to do test recording. So we had a best practice, a super user who had done a submission or two already, walk us through the process and recording that process so that our staff saw, using our systems with properties they were familiar with, the team members they were familiar with, how to do it through each step. This was a great tool for others in your team so that as their properties become eligible, they can see it using, again, their own reports and staff they're familiar with. Next slide, please. Next is focus on eligible households. When this program was first introduced, it seemed very large, very overwhelming, very looming. And what we discovered as we went on and developed a process for this is that we were spending time creating lists just for eligible households. So as other presenters have already mentioned, not everyone in your property or portfolio has a rental balance, and not everyone is 12 months behind. So really try to focus on eligible properties, eligible households, and eligible balances, making this much more attainable for you and your team members. So you're clear on who you'll be reaching out to and have a common scope of work. Next slide, please. Consider your touch points with residents. Think about the already existing touch points that you have with folks who live in your community. How can these best be leveraged for points of contact that to let folks know about SHERA? Is this resident scheduled to come in for a recertification soon? Is that resident, do they have a planned work order? So really think about what those touch points are, community programs, events, times you'll see people, especially hard to reach residents, that you can best leverage to get the word out about this program. Next slide, please. So as a few of the panelists have said, really consider tailoring your outreach materials. The SHERA team provides a great general household letter, letting residents know that they're eligible for the program. One of the tactics we took was to tailor this to fit our individual property. So we personalized it for specific eligible renters, letting them know not just that this program was available, but that they specifically were eligible for it and what balance of theirs it could cover. And that we could complete 99% of the application for them and then manage the submission and the return. So create a script that your whole staff is familiar with so that everyone's on the same page when you're reaching out. Next slide, please. So residents with mounting balances are hard to reach in part because those mounting balances are daunting. We're 15 months into a pandemic. So really make sure that your SHERA package, all of the materials that you're assembling for submission and the tenant certification that the resident will be signing off are prepared in advance. For folks that we haven't heard from in some time, you might want to make the most of that outreach by coming prepared. So in that moment when you reach them on the phone or they come into the office, everything is ready to go and filed for them. Next slide, please. Expand your team. So really think about who can be part of your team and think outside of the box. We've had great success amongst the pilot properties with support from community partners, resident leaders, our maintenance staff, and residents who've already participated in SHERA. All of these folks have been really vital in gaining participation for hard to reach residents because of the relationships they have. So making sure, as Juliana said earlier, that say it very loud and to everyone, talk about SHERA to everyone, because those relationships will pay off and one submission will beget another. Next slide, please. Launch with urgency. Our communities are often peppered with flyers and program information and other assistance program opportunities on community billboards and hallways, elevators, on cars outside. So residents often don't take note of yet another one. So work to create urgency and excitement about SHERA in your community so folks do take notice. Get creative. This is an incredible opportunity, as the other panelists have said, so make sure that message gets to the eligible households in a way that works for your community and you know your community best. Next slide, please. Follow-up is key. Create a consistent outreach schedule for hard to reach residents and stick to it, tracking each time you reach out. As you start to reach households, make sure the required documentation is filed and confirmed in your tracking so that you can close the book on each submission as you complete it. Next slide, please. And lastly, keep track of your progress. This will allow you to understand where and how you're successful and where you may need additional support. Track eligible household balances like it's your before picture and completed submissions like your after picture together so that you can help owners and operators understand what's working and what's not. And then most importantly, celebrate your successes, which with each upload, you're going to see this green checkbox and it becomes a very beautiful picture. And because of each of those uploads, at-risk households are stabilized and your teams are responsible for that work. This has been a challenging 15 months for everyone. And so those efforts matter so much, helping thousands and thousands of individuals and families in Massachusetts weather the storm. So as others have said, we work in 23 different states and have experienced over 60 of these emergency rental assistance programs nationally. SHERA is hands down the most efficient emergency rental assistance program we've encountered. So I'll hand things back to Rob now to talk through best practices on application submissions.
Thanks so much, Trevor. So just briefly, best practices on submitting an application in the portal. First is when you get into the SHERA portal, you will need to register your properties. And to do that, you will enter the project ID number, which you will receive with an invitation to participate in the program. And you're also entering the owner's tax ID for the property. So a common hiccup that we have are not including dashes when entering these numbers. And to avoid that, again, just the project ID number, and the tax ID, and being sure to include dashes when entering both of those fields. As part of the SHERA portal, you're also asked to provide your direct deposit information. So what's happening is the direct deposit information you submit is being verified against the records that your bank has. So it's very important that the information that you submit as part of the direct deposit information matches exactly the records that your bank has on file. And then finally, owner operators are required to submit a W-9. And just like the direct deposit information, the W-9 information being submitted is being verified against the IRS records. So again, you want to make sure that the info you submit includes all of those records, including the federal tax classification with the IRS. I'll just touch on when submitting an actual application. So we heard from a few owner property managers who use the Excel template that's being provided, and others that might do an import. So you can do either or. There is no requirement to do either or. However, just to note, it's easiest if you match the data field names exactly and follow the data field formatting instructions. So for example, if you are using your own Excel spreadsheet, don't use any formulas. Make sure that the date fields are correct. Just really ensuring that the data is as clean as possible so that you're successful in the application upload. And I'll just note over to the right, we do have on the SHERA portal, you can find the application template, which will be updated to include the additional months, as well as an instruction, two-pager instruction on how to complete the actual application itself. So we will now hear from Rosalind Cresswell, who will share more about the community mediation program.
Thanks very much for the introduction. I am pleased to have an opportunity to talk briefly, we haven't got much time left, about a complementary program that's part of the Governor's Eviction Diversion Initiative, because we realize that not everything can be solved with rental assistance. So with the basics, let's start with that. What is mediation? So for those of you who don't already know, it's a voluntary process. That means that nobody involved in it has to enter the process or continue the process if it's not working out for them. It's confidential within certain limited parameters, which means that nothing that is talked about in a mediation can be later called upon and used in court. It's a process facilitated by specially trained neutrals who are the mediators. That means that they don't take sides in the mediation. They help people have the conversation and figure out a way to solve whatever the situation is. They prioritize self-determination, very different from a court approach, because it means that people have some control over the outcome of the conversation that they have together, rather than being told what the outcome is going to be by a third party. And another important part, particularly in these types of cases, is informed consent of the participants. So we want to make sure, ideally, before people get into mediation, that they know what their rights are and that have been properly advised and have access to programs like SHERA and RAFT and TPP and things. So that's all cases are very closely screened by a case coordinator before getting to the mediation table. And then the mediators can also refer people out for additional assistance that they need. Couple of points about what mediation isn't, because people often have a wrong idea about it. So it's not adjudicatory. As I say, the mediator isn't going to take sides, they're not going to make recommendations, and they're not going to direct the parties towards a particular outcome or tell them what to do. It's also not a reluctant compromise. So it's not a way of dragging people to the middle. The name is something of a misnomer, I think, for mediation. It's about finding what's going to work for people and how best to achieve that. It's not about getting people, as I say, to a place where they may be both or one may be unhappy. The traditional idea is that it's a win-win solution. Next slide, please. So why should you choose community mediation? So first of all, very important issue, it's free and it's a faster alternative to court action. Of the people that we surveyed over the 6 months that we've been operational, 100% of participants that we surveyed thought that the process was fair, and we've handled about 388 cases during that period. It's got a high rate of success. So the settlement rate around cases is 79.8% as it currently stands of all the closed cases. There's no tenant income eligibility limit for services, so it's available to all community members. And I want to emphasize at any stage of the process, I know there's a diagram about this earlier, but really just to stress that as soon as we're not linked to court action at all, we're separate from that. So the best time really to reach out to a mediation centre is as soon as possible, at the earliest possible indication of there being a problem. Reach out to a mediation centre and see if they can support you at that point. But we can also be brought in prior to filing a notice to quit if you haven't been able to get anywhere, after filing the notice to quit, but before the hearing. There are mediators available often on the day of trial at different courts. And anecdotally, we're starting to hear also that even for cases that have been through court, there may be other issues which have not been caught by that, no pun intended, but by that particular process. And so there may still be issues left to work out. And so you could still bring a case to mediation at that point. It allows for flexible and creative outcomes. 95.35% of people were satisfied with the outcome and how the problem was handled. It's, as I say, it's not tied into the limitations of a particular action. You can bring up other issues that might relate to the tenancy at the same time. And it can help particularly with ongoing communication or relationship issues. We've got a quotation from a landlord mediation participant here who says that they have other processes pending in court, and they'll definitely advise their clients to pursue mediation to resolve the dispute. As I say, when there's an ongoing relationship, this is a way of kind of working on that relationship, improving communication, even building skills amongst people to have difficult conversations. So it's a particularly important way of maintaining some stability in the relationship. So next slide, please. We've got a lot more information, haven't been able to say very much today about what mediation is, where the centres are. We have one in each of the counties of the state. They can all be contacted and provide services by phone, via Zoom or in person. The website address is there, www.resolutionma.org. There's a specialised page on housing, which you can access there. So I invite you all to check that out. And also to remember, although we're part of the Eviction Diversion Initiative, community mediation is always there. So even beyond this crisis, if any of the landlord-tenant issues that you're dealing with you're finding problems with and difficult to resolve, reach out to community mediation. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. So we will now open the floor for questions. You can type them in the chat.
Thanks, Rob. So we did get a couple questions, and we'll leave I'll leave like 2 minutes for you to cover the last few kind of next steps. And again, if we don't get to your questions, we will do so in our FAQs. But the first one is for properties who do not receive an invitation with their portal ID. For properties who do not receive an invitation with their portal ID cannot participate. Is this correct? I don't know if you actually want to go to that next slide and cover kind of some of those next steps, because this will kind of answer, I think, this question.
Absolutely. So registering for SHERA. So if you have received an invitation for your property or properties with a project ID, you can register and submit claims on the SHERA portal. But if you've not received an invitation for your property, you will be on the lookout for an invitation to pre-screen your properties for SHERA eligibility. And once approved, you will receive a project ID, and you can then register and submit claims on the portal. If you don't think you're on the mailing list for that invitation, you can email shera@mass.gov with your contact information to be included on that list. So again, if you haven't yet received an invite, no need to worry. You will receive an invite as long as we have your contact information and as long as you provide the information for pre-screening your property for eligibility in the program.
A tenant has older charges on their account, we would apply any payment they make to the oldest charges first. Should we continue doing this for tenants who have made payments, or should we literally go month to month? And I'm not sure who wants to, from our Lori, if you want to.
I can take a stab at it, sure, and
Great.
then other folks can jump in. So SHERA as a program can only pay for arrearages starting on April 1st. And as we've said, we'll go up to 18 months after that. We have a number of suggestions for prior arrearages. We would really encourage you to work with tenants to create repayment agreements. Mediation might be very helpful for that. And then additionally, the RAFT program does still exist. So if tenants are income eligible for that, and if they haven't maxed out their RAFT benefits previously, they may be able to get some RAFT support to pay for those older arrearages. So there are a number of things that you can explore. But it is true that SHERA and ERAP generally, I do believe, can only pay for arrearages starting with the beginning of the pandemic, although there are other programs and other resources that can help your tenants address those.
Thanks, Lori. So this next question is, can we submit the original tenant certification for the 12 months and then resubmit a new certification for the following additional 6 months? So Rob, do you want to take a stab at this one?
Sure. So if a resident head of household has already signed the tenant certification for that original assistance period, they do not need to sign a new certification. What we are doing is updating the certification for all residents, all households, to just be a little bit more generalized in terms of the assistance that can be provided and the consent or the permission that the resident is applying for any potential future rent arrearages. But you do not need to resubmit a new certification for that following additional 6 months. Instead, you will need to send a opt-out notice to the resident, and if they so choose, they can opt out for that additional assistance.
And Rob, it is also fair to say that if you are applying for, this is only rental arrears, so you do have to wait till the first of the month to submit for the previous month. So in this scenario, maybe this person would be waiting until September or later this summer to submit another batch, which is one method.
That's correct. SHERA pays rental arrears only. It does not pay prospective renter stipends.
Great. So I know we're tight on time. So if you want to take us home, Rob, and if you do have any questions, you can type them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them in our FAQs. Thanks.
So just to wrap up, again, highlights of the program. As you heard, the opportunity to provide bulk uploads of multiple residents on a single application. A response rate that is currently at 18 days. Using the income certifications that many property owners and managers already have, and continuing the eviction diversion pledge to keep households in stable housing. And we have plenty of resources available on the SHERA portal at sherafunding.mass.gov. And we will circulate this presentation for reference so you can visit the portal, view the policy guidance, as well as the notifications and form letters. And if there is a question, if you do have any questions, technical policy, we do encourage you to submit a support ticket direct on the portal, and we will answer those questions as quickly as we can. So I just wanted to first thank you, Robert, Juliana, Trevor, Carrie, and Rosalind, for such great information on best practices and additional tools available to implement the program. And everyone, thank you for your time today. We look forward to receiving your questions and your participation in this program. So thank you again, and have a great day.